Our last AGM was not in 2022, but in November 2021.
The distinction between Georgian and Regency sometimes gets wonderfully confused. But it was a period of huge change, as you know, with a lot going on. So it's embroidered in gold and silks, the type-threaded silks. You can't see it, it's a mantua, so there is actually a gown. That's the petticoat. There is actually a gown, but it's folded over at the back, so you can't really see it. It must have weighed a ton. It would have looked gorgeous by candlelight. Absolutely stunning. Imagine the gold thread glistening. In the Georgian period. Yes, English embroidery was important at this time, yes. But it wasn't quite as famous abroad, if you like, as the Open Carmen is in many years. That was important over the US.
There was no official trip to York in 2022, but some members did attend the York Georgians' annual spring lecture, which was held at the Quaker Meeting House.
Robert is going to play is what was the 9th tune out of the 10 tunes that the Harrison Clock played.
Can you get your head back, please? I hate you cracking me out. That's another 250 kilograms. Make a simple broke out into a chorus of the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And the Sledmere Sykes Monument, that's 15 miles on the dot.
Yes, bring it all this way, and now it's getting further away.
Extraordinary, isn't it?
But you know, it's fine.
So by doing that, you can then ring 2 tunes rather than going ding ding, and then you can move.
Where's the nearest phone from here then? Has anybody got their sense of direction? I have no idea which way I'm pointing.
Do we know which way we are? So that's why the hands always look a little bit out.
Mm-hmm. And that's always been the case for years.
Kind of nice thing. We all know.
It's history.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's 3/4 of a minute. Go on.
Goes, you see all the linkage staff who instead of the guys who reloaded the roof, like there says about when you get the bits of rope that's left on the wheel, that's the original rope from 1901. But when we did it, we lifted the bell up. We took this one out. The beams up there, what the bell was originally lifted on, it was blocked. Can you recast the bell, but don't make it any bigger than the existing one? Otherwise it won't fit, we'll keep the frame. So Northwood had all this put in for the 5-ton bell. So he buys a 7-ton bell, which is fine.
Well, 1857 is that? It says it's prior to the
with her baby, and her husband was away fighting for the king. And the story is that the parliamentarians were able to bring a boat all the way up. And basically this turret here was designed to be an escape route if your house came under attack. And there was a trapdoor at the bottom into the beck, and that was how you were supposed to escape if your house was being attacked. But unfortunately, as I say, that was destroyed. I don't know if David can help me with this. I think, was it the 1800s?
1857. This gentleman's got another picture.
I've got one just before the operation in 1857.
My favourite view of the house is from near the Monk's Walk where the yew trees are. And I really like that view. You get sort of the end with the turrets and also the staircase. Left, you've got the turret one at the back that I'm talking about. This one here that just runs from the ground floor. Oh, huge, absolutely huge. And you can see it then from the
People are not coming in, probably going straight to...
Well, first of all, welcome, Mrs. Berries. As John said, we as a family have been here since 1922. My grandfather moved into the Abbey in 1922. So we've had quite an association. My parents were married in the church here. My grandparents are buried in the churchyard outside, so we've got quite an association with this church. I've been in the church warden ever since the then vicar told me out of there. She's like to be a church warden and everything else. John had been a padre in the parish, and when John told me to jump, he just asked him how high, he didn't ask him why. So that's when I became a church warden. Don't expect to see me in church, you might see me at Christmas, but I want to see the church here. I will support you in whatever way I can, financially or in certain skills as well. And so, 12, 15 years ago, we set about to get on with the repairs, and we got to the diocese for a faculty and everything else. Some gentleman turned up in the night and nicked half the red lead off the roof.
I'll just say something about the history of it, nothing much more than it's on the sheet. And then we're going to go across and just step just inside the gate of the hall and look towards the hall. And then we're going to come out and go around where John's part of the hall is and have a closer look at the building where the older part is, the mullioned windows and the diaper work and the things to see. 17th century, you'll see them around the new skyway with big houses. You know, it's a way of giving a decoration to the brickwork. They were only just beginning to use brickwork, and they weren't quite sure. That's where the drastic work was being done, 1838 sort of time, something like that. After the, well, the Dennisons might have been doing. They were just doing it before the Hollands got it, in 1830s or so. Right, John's in charge of the next bit.
Farms, 4 of them that was the Four Brothers. The railway came in 1845, which is straight through the middle. The Lord then built this church, South Dalton of course, which you know, and also Scorbridge Church, you can see when you go past. For my sins, I haven't been in that church, but you say it's just like a mini cathedral inside.
Yes, very nice. Yes, very lovely.
2022 saw the celebration of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. In Cottingham, it was celebrated in an interesting way. Driffield, the capital of the Wolds.
Supposed to have happened the previous week, but Her Majesty the Queen got in the way of that engagement. So we've had it a week late, but on time and on the due date. We're all here. So over to you, Mike.
Thank you very much indeed for you. This is Cross Hill, also known as Pinfold Hill in the past, and it's the place where a lot of activities took place in the 18th and 19th century. Abolished, and that became a large iron foundry over there, and those are the remains of some of those buildings. The one here that says Georgian on the end is part of the old iron foundry. To the right it's more modern, to the left it's more modern, and it used to be called long ago the Bluebell, and there was the Black Swan. Unfortunately that was demolished and replaced with that building, like that. Behind you here, I used to be able to say this was the NatWest Bank, but like many banks, they've forsaken their clients and departed. The tower is 110 feet high. It's a pretty large tower, not quite. You can't see it from here, but there's a castle mound. There was a Watton Bailey castle, and it's believed that the Anglo-Saxons had in inverted commas, a palace, burials and things like that. But of course, at Little Driffield, there, I'll keep pumping Little Driffield because I'm church warden there. But in the church there's a plaque, although it's a modern plaque which is a copy of previous plaques, and there's evidence to say that, so some people will say there's a king buried at Little Driffield. There's no evidence for that. We know he died here. One of my friends who has done a lot of research about this chap suggests that he might have been buried here first, but may subsequently have been exhumed and taken to Whitby. Langtoft and Driffield had a number of flash floods. So all this water came surging down from Cowlham, and a farmer got on his horse and rode all the way to Driffield to warn the people for the cattle market, which occupied that area there right up to the buildings, and it was Bridlington Road. If you do ever come back, then it's worth walking up Bridlington Road or Napperton Road here. But he was a most important chap in the history of Driffield. There were a number of farmers who were ahead at the time, including Henry Best, and Driffield was certainly out-competing Bridlington in the corn trade in the 1750s and 60s.
It's been fantastic, really good to get to know Driffield at close quarters. Lovely evening, just the right amount of information. It's really good of you to do it, and we appreciate it.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, that's very kind of you.
The architect Francis Frederick Johnson was an early member of the Georgian Society for East Yorkshire. When he died in 1995, his architectural practice was continued by Digby Harris and Malcolm Staver. In 2022, both partners decided to retire. The office in Bridlington was closed, and the extensive archives dating back to the 1930s were deposited at the Hull History Centre.
The plaque used to be on that building over there.
Ah, right.
That register office as it is now.
Right.
And then they discovered through Susan's research
Does it should be
that it
here?
should be here. Ah.
Pass over to Barbara to say a few words, and then we'll move on to Stuart doing his performance.
Thank you everybody for coming. I think that William Croskill was a very nice fellow. Stuart has got a portrait of him, or connections to the portrait, and he looks very jolly and light-hearted, and you know how Victorian people can look really stuffy, but he doesn't look like that. He looks like fun, I think. He had a terrible beginning in a sort of Victorian how to succeed way. He was born actually in 1791, so he was a Georgian, and he was the eldest of 7 children, and his father was a tinsmith, which really, the beginning meant he mended pots and pans. It wasn't very grand. And when his father died, this lad, who was 13, I think, was apprenticed to his widowed mother in order to try and keep the business running. And at that point, they seem to have mostly made bells. And although some of the histories think they were church bells, they were not, of course, because that would be an enormous casting process. They made the kind of bells that the middle classes put in their house with a long bit of wire to the thing beside the back for the servants to come. And you've seen them all over. In fact, the casting of the lamp standards went to Croskill because the ordering place in Sheffield, which Malham had used, no longer had any orders from Beverley. And as we've been on the gas walk, see the design is exactly the same, copied from one to the next, but he put Croskill on the bottom and not Malham. But he did, while we are partly regarding him as a great lamppost maker, he was actually more important as an agricultural instrument maker.
Bye. Thank you.
known that yesterday the principal proclamation for the accession of a new monarch was proclaimed at St James's Palace, London. 8 years for His Majesty the King. Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray!
I came to Withensea first of all 1961 to 65. When my wife passed away in 2010, that same week I bought a holiday home in Withensea and have since extended it, so I've now lived 8 years fully in Withensea, 7 days a week when I'm not on holiday, and I've also been, I think, the most swims I've ever done in the North Sea, counting sitting in the North Sea because it's mountainous, is 170 in the first year of COVID.
It's very unusual to have a monument on the outside of a church like this. If you think about our local churches, St Mary's and the Minster, there are no memorials around the outside of it. And many churches I've looked at, the same thing applies. You're either in the ground outside or you're inside if you're a free, high-class person. And it's later on, the plaque I'm talking about, sounding stroke, severed the head from the culprit's body when a fierce and simultaneous shriek from the females present broke the air. And that is the verbatim account transmitted from generation to generation of the execution.
Yeah. There's the bracket, it's pretty old, and it's weathered.
Yeah.
It is very crumbly. There's a hook on the top. It's like a bracket on the bottom and then a hook on the top so it can't fall out.
Yes.
So it's like literally sitting.
Is it of the same material as the original?
Exactly the same. Even the mistakes he made in setting out, the swords are not absolutely centered, and the line you see on top is slightly sloping down.
The lettering isn't perfectly centered.
It's not perfect.
It hasn't been painted that on the letters.